Hello everyone. Welcome to another Workshop Wednesday. My name is Mike Stratton. I am a systems engineer here at Verify, and I will be your host for today's workshop. Today we are joined by Matt Sykes. How's it going, Matt?
Good, Mike. How are you, buddy?
Good, good, thank you. Matt is going to show everyone how to report on transferred calls and auto attending calls. Today, we're going to start with a quick overview of the company and what we do. Next, Matt will show us how to report on transferred and auto-attending calls within Verify. Then we'll pause for some Q&A and get some of your questions answered during the demo. If you have any questions, please make sure to ask them in the Q&A panel on the bottom right corner of your screen. Then after Q&A, we'll reward one lucky attendee with a $50 Amazon gift card. So hang around to see if you've won. Quick overview of Verify. Verify is the preferred analytics and management solution for Cisco collaboration. We provide industry-leading CDR, UCCX, and Cube call analytics, customizable dashboards and widgets, remote phone control, and change management. But today's webinar is mainly going to focus on the CDR reporting and call analytics. Last but not least, for those of you looking for a more hands-off Verify experience, we do offer a managed consulting service. This is a service that provides a dedicated Verify SE to do all the heavy lifting, giving you and your users a completely hands-off experience. Think of it like an extension of your organization. It provides upgrades, one-on-one training, report and dashboard building, or anything you need. Your dedicated Verify systems engineer has you covered. The only thing you have to do is give us a call or send an email. If you want any additional information on our ECS service, feel free to reach out to your account manager, and we'd be happy to see if ECS is right for you. With all of that said, I'm going to pass the ball to Matt, and Matt, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Matt Sykes with Verify here. Thank you for joining us today for our Wednesday workshop. As Mike just mentioned, we're going to be kind of covering, calls, to auto attendants, to Unity handlers, as well as kind of other kind of transfer kind of call situations within a UCM environment. So first place I'd love to start, which everyone should be able to see here in my lab, is the analytics reporting module, and specifically the history search section here, or what I deem as the sandbox, because I feel that anything that you need to do for any of the reports, for the queries, for the dashboard widgets, as far as kind of synthesizing or reviewing some of the search filters that we've got in there, are servicing your report or your dashboard widgets properly. Definitely, I bounce back and forth between this history section and reports and dashboard widgets when I'm building them and pairing them for customer environments. So what we're going to start with today is, as Mike kind of mentioned here, Unity handlers, auto attendants, and transfers and stuff like that. So mainly I'm going to be picking on the Unity call handler that I have in this lab environment. And we're going to do so here just from the history search. So this may be a little rudimentary for some, but just bear with us. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run a quick little sample search here for the previous 7 days, let's say. I'm looking for my specific Unity identifier. Now, whether that's a directory number or a DN or a specific device name that's actually tied to it, or maybe even a type. So one thing I always do is within the sandbox here, we do offer this one field out of the box, which is original called party number. Change the Boolean on it to starts with one wildcard character, so one character or better for the previous 7 days. So it should give me all my call traffic from this lab for the previous 7 days. So the results that we're seeing here, these 3,700 calls, certainly we can peruse them at our leisure. I have quite a few extra columns that are in here in the show hide columns, and I'm going to be adding more. So bear with me on that. But we'll certainly review them and see their value in a few moments. So I'm searching for everything in this lab environment for the previous 7 days. Mainly what I'm doing here is I'm actually looking for what my Unity, I guess, device name or directory number is. Should be able to find that, the DN at least underneath the final call party number and the device name underneath, obviously terminating device name. In my lab, I just know that it's 8,000, and here's the terminating device name for it, CUC-verify with a typo in it. Certainly, this kind of mode of options for a quick search can help you kind of find your Unity DN or your terminating device name that represents Unity pretty easily. Certainly there could be some patterns, UCXN, et cetera, but just quickly searching here, I can see that 8,000 is I know it is also by this this device pattern as well. So what we're going to want to know is actually calls that are, that are finalizing, or they're, I guess, terminating, or that are have a point in their call flow that is actually hitting the Unity handler. So in my lab environment, it's going to be 8,000. So let's actually pick on 8,000 real quickly. So I'm going to just remove that sample field that was offered and use final called party number. So from the search criteria dropdown, I have my laundry list or library of filter options here. Dynamic keyword search is built into every one of our dropdowns because we definitely know the lists are long. But let's go ahead and pick on final called party number. Lock that in. We'll populate the 8,000 DN that we saw in this little quick search here once I found it. Or I could certainly have used, terminating device name. Certainly have other options there as well. Within Verify, you certainly have more than one option to search or group things, as always. Okay, so for the previous 7 days, I'm looking for anything that terminated on 8,000 here. All right, just seeing here briefly, I did have some other calls are from the internal variety, so let's go ahead and filter those out as well. So we can just lock in on true inbound external calls that are ending up in Unity. Now, whether or not they're going through the handler, we're going to find that out in a moment. But let's go ahead and filter these guys out right now. So we'll just piggyback off of the search criteria I currently have, which is final call party number equaling the voicemail DN number. And I can do, once again, I can filter by a handful of different options. I can use calling party number. I can use a specific device name or description or a type based off of the results we're seeing. Let me just scroll down here real briefly so that makes some sense. So find some inbounds. So I could key, here's an inbound call right here. So I could key off of originating device name, or even the originating device type, or maybe in the device description, or even, which are one of my favorites, is going to be the calling party number, where I can actually just use DN digit lengths, or I guess just digit lengths period, to filter out the internals. And I'm actually going to do that. So I'm going to pick on calling party number, which is the top of the list underneath originating. We'll go ahead and lock that in. The AND mechanism is already turned on here for us, so the match criteria is already turned on. You can see I've got breadcrumbs here. I've done this a few times. So in my lab environment, I know that I have internal 4- and 5-digit extension numbers. So I'm pretty much just going to use the Boolean logic here within Verify to specify that I'm looking for a calling party number starts with 6 characters or better, let's say. So that should certainly encapsulate the 10+ digit external numbers for calling into an environment. Okay, and together with the Unity DN here for the previous 7 days once again. So 527 calls of the inbound variety that are coming in from full 10-digit numbers. Now, pay no attention to the 1, 2, 3, 4 in the back end. This is spoof data for sure. But definitely these 527 calls definitely know that they are terminating down to the 8,000 DN or to my Unity device port. All right, now from there, there's some information we're going to need to know, but we're going to go ahead and export these results real quickly. Because what I want to do is I want to turn on what's paramount for today's exercise is going to be the cradle to grave logic that's built into Verify. So going down to this option here within the export, we're going to turn on the top toggle to turn on all the cradle to grave, or C2G options as we call them. And we don't need to create any cradle to grave search sets just yet. That's going to be towards the end of the call. But plainly, I just want to run this real briefly for these 527 calls. What the C2G logic is going to do for us is it's going to include additional call legs that are associated to these 527 calls that we see here. I'm going to be running these all in HTML. No need to squint. I'm going to zoom for everyone's eyes, but the reason I'm running them in HTML is because the PDF will certainly chop columns on me, and I will be adding more columns in a few moments as well. So we'll zoom in here to 150%. Give it a second or two. Obviously, you can see the slide up here. It's a pretty wide and long report here. Okay, so we can see these of these 527 calls. Here they are. Certainly, towards the end of the report is going to be the cradle to grave sections, and turning on that cradle to grave logic does give us this for this most right column of related calls. So if there are other calls that are related to this one, we will see a hyperlink with a numeric specifying, the number of legs that are also associated to this record. Now, these top 3, for instance, these could be calls that just came in. They maybe just left a voice message, or maybe they just maybe there was a self-help option, for instance, in the Unity handler script, for instance. We'll dig into that in a moment, and we'll probably do so off of these cause codes as well. But what we're looking at here real briefly is, let's just pick on this one that we see 4. So there's definitely plenty of them that have 4s. So we're going to go ahead and click on this hyperlink. It's going to shoot me down the bottom of the report to the specific section of that call sequence. So sequence 234. So this is the external caller of that we were just looking at up above. But what's below it are obviously the other 4 legs that are associated to this call. Now we can read these top down to actually see how a call ebbs and flows through your call manager environment, whether it's getting transferred, redirected automatically, or by the system, or by human intervention as well. We'll be able to see that. Okay. So once again, reading top down, we can see this external party called into my 7100, rolled over to my 8000, which is my Unity handler or my Unity option. From there, we know that obviously we can see subsequent legs in here. So we can see that this caller was then presented over to our contact center here on probably a contact center express trigger on that 77100. We'll be using those later as well. But we can follow it all the way down, and we can see that someone in rentals then picked this call for 19 seconds or so, but then also then transferred the call, looks like back to, or tried to transfer it over to the 77280, which me, myself, I know that's a Hunt Pilot, but it wasn't answered, and it was actually picked up by Unity then for a second. And then from there was a 45-second connection between this external party and my Unity handler. Now, whether or not that's someone probably leaving a voice message for this Hunt group or looking to be transferred out elsewhere, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But the luxury of actually having the accessibility to all this data, Verify has the capability of using cradle-to-grave logic and additional search sets, which we'll get into shortly here, that I can pick and choose different bits and pieces out of these sequence legs and then make additional summarizations within our report bodies as well. So we don't necessarily need to know about all this. What's bolded in orange, in case anybody's wondering, the reason why some rows are bolded orange and some aren't, the ones that are bolded orange are actually matching my initial search criteria, which was the calling party number greater than 6 characters and the final called party number equaling the DN of 8,000. Thus why the last one was bolded as well. Okay, but certainly that can double inflate summarize counts as well. So within these sections, we normally really only want to see one bolded orange row, but we can talk about that in a bit as well. Okay, so now that we know what our Unity port number is, it is 8,000, that we do know. But now looking at that information, or looking kind of at these cradle to grave search sets a little bit, excuse me, we want to know what the options are. So if there is a Unity handler off of this 8,000 that is servicing some options, we're going to see subsequent legs in these sequences, knowing that they were routed elsewhere. For instance, this one right here came to 7080, went to 8000, and then transferred on down to 77280, which I know is a Hunt group. It's being stamped here, Hunt Pilot DN. I can see it was picked by extension 1548 by this user in this department that we actually created from Call Manager for a minute and 30 seconds. Okay, so maybe this Unity handler has an option. Those call handler menu trees, options, menu, 1 through 10, for instance, or or 1 through 5 equates to some directory number that may be unbeknownst to you, but we can certainly kind of run through exercises to kind of figure that out as well. So definitely one of the glaring questions is, okay, for my Unity handler or my auto attendant, how many calls that are coming into that call tree or that call menu, that handler, whatever you want to call it, options 1 through 5, we'll call them. How many are going option 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? We want to know about that. A little kind of legwork is done needing kind of to utilize this cradle to grave functionality to kind of identify that stuff if you don't know it out of the box, and not many people do because it's CDR, and who really is memorizing their own CDR, but I suppose some people could. But we can peer around here real briefly and see where are these next steps on all these calls, because what's bolded in orange here at the very top is my first initial piece that I'm really keying off of, or my initial search set. So externals that are ending up in 8,000, but then also are flowing somewhere else or being transferred or rerouted elsewhere. This one here, I can see that is once again being presented to a 77100 trigger, going into contact center, and then it's terminating in there. And the way I can tell it's terminating by the normal call clearing cause code. The reason I have these on here is because this will actually kind of illuminate or kind of clarify which leg is actually the last end of the call. And also then by the direction, by either originating or terminating, signify exactly which party hung up the phone first or which party disconnected the call first. Now seeing the normal call clearing here on the originating side, I know that goes all the way back to all my originating data here over towards the left. That tells me that this external party was the party that hung up the phone while probably waiting in queue. Okay, scrolling down. So if you have menus, a menu tree of 1 through 5, what we'll need to do is kind of dig out and know exactly what the translated directory numbers are for those submenu options. For instance, this is rentals, but it's coming off of the 8,000. This 1533, for instance, that may be a shared line for the rentals department to pick calls. Maybe that's option 2, maybe that's option 3, etc. We can certainly have you guys place test calls into your handlers, maybe from a phone that's certainly not connected to your call manager, maybe your personal cell phone, and then we can kind of search it, reverse kind of search it in this methodology with cradle to grave turned on, and actually see all the ebbs and flows of your calls, knowing that you probably pressed maybe option 1 or option 2 going to this department or that department. Then we're going to see all those steps, and then we'll be able to identify those directory numbers that are actually servicing those menu options off of the handler. And then we can build either dashboard widgets and also structured reports that actually give that summarization as well. So peering through the cradle to grave details will certainly help us assemble kind of those search queries that we can also figure out within the history section as well. So we'll be bouncing back and forth here. All right, so from there, what we're going to do is we want to isolate some of these as well. So one thing that we'll probably want to do is jump back to the history search. So there's definitely calls that can, that were presented to maybe exactly like right here. So presented to extension 1127, but then that person didn't answer in owner service and it rolled over to voicemail. So this is probably a specific, agents or users voicemail box. Those we don't necessarily want to classify for, an auto attendant or a Unity handler. So, but there's other things that we can bake in here. So I know I've got a lot of columns in here, but like I said, I'm going to add more. So with all those kind of redirections, those transfers, there's always going to be quite a few legs or additional call legs in the call. So I'm going to grab a few more pieces here. I'm going to grab all my redirection options. I'm going to add those in, and I'll even grab my on behalf of codes, because also this stuff can be used as additional filters as well. So let's go ahead and save that. And let's just kind of comb on over to the right and see those new fields. Pass my codes. All right, here we are. Let me zoom in for everyone's eyes. Okay, so we've got redirection reasons from the originating and last directions. Last redirect DN, which is a paramount one that I'm going to use in a few moments as well. But also there's a lot of other content from the CDR that we can extrapolate here. So we see, there's call forwards, there's unknowns, there's transfers. So we're going to see a lot of this, in a lot of, forward, a lot of redirects, a lot of menu option presses, because the system is obviously, per the scripting, routing calls appropriately. So I'm going to pick on, I don't see it in here maybe. I'm going to pick on the last redirect DN of 8,000. I've got too many here to key off of, but let's do a quick history search of this. So let me just remove that, still keeping the external inbound piece. So calling party number starts with greater than my internal digit length. I'm going to pick on last redirect DN. Now, knowing that my Unity handler, and actually if I take a look, oh, I don't have it in here, never mind, excuse me. Let's key off of the last redirect of 8,000. And with this, let's go ahead and search this for the previous 7 days. Okay, so 57 calls. All right, a little better to deal with there. Let's go ahead and run the export now. Make sure the cradle grave's turned on. Okay, very good. Let's run this in HTML. It should be pretty quickly. All right, let me zoom in for your eyes again. Maybe 125 is best. Okay, so for these calls here, once again, I'm going to go on down to the far right, look for the related calls section or the column. Click on that, jump down. We can look at any one of these. So now we're kind of keying on the second leg of these calls. So certainly the top leg was no longer bolded orange because we're not concerned with the final call party number equaling 8,000. However, one of those columns I just added on that last redirect DN, here it is right here, it is 8,000. This actually services us to know that actually the previous leg actually came from Unity, or it came from 8,000. So we have something to reference, as well as knowing that these just aren't inbound calls directly into this hunt group that seems to be here. So, and seeing that it is coming from 8,000 on the last redirect DN, that does tell us that it came from our Unity handler. So potentially that could be a submenu option within that tree. Maybe it's option 1, 2, or 3. Remains to be seen, certainly. But now from that, what we can see, and we can actually build this into widgets and in reports as well, so we can actually just lock into actually how many times people called in, hit the handler, and then actually route it over to a hunt group just by actually pointing specifically at the secondary leg. And I can do so pretty much with the same search I just used, filtering out the internals using the full maybe 10-digit or greater than my internal DN digit length on the calling party side, and then also keying off of the last redirect DN of 8,000 or what my Unity handler DN is. And then that will give us all the calls that are actually, flowing down, that are coming from the Unity handler, coming to a hunt group. And then we can group those, in widgets or reports by, a handful of options. Do we want to group them by departments and then their end user IDs, or by device descriptions, or by their MACs, or by their DNs? So we certainly have a lot of options there. But once again, if we're looking to tackle the whole tree, obviously, let's say there's maybe 3 to 5 options, for instance. Maybe this is option 3 we'll pick on. But there's probably going to be other options as well. But this is a good kind of use case here to see additional data metrics that we can use and pull into this so that we can kind of build this out accordingly. Now, to save everyone's eyes from watching me walk through and build out a whole report, this is something I kind of have pre-made for us on these sections to kind of take a quick look at, and I'll zoom in for your eyes real briefly. So calls into my main initial search set, and we'll pull up the report config in a second to compare with this as well. But it calls into my Unity call handler. I picked on, so maybe let's do it right now, just so everyone can drive along with me here. Calling it Matt Unity call handler. Here we go. Okay, so for my initial search function for this report here, so my initial search set, I'm calling it calls into Unity call handler -main. I can see over this time frame here that there's 3,651 calls that were presented to this handler. What we're using within the report to pull that is me keying off of, well, I could have done a couple different ways. Keying off of the final called party number equaling the 8,000, or the first leg that we were looking at in those sequences just a few minutes ago. Certainly I could swap this out with the calling party number, the digit length if I wanted to. I guess this one was using a device name, but certainly as you can see, there are options. And that's really all I need for the initial search. They are ANDed together, I can see that. But then from there, we want to have another subsection actually of all the menu options in that handler tree. Now I can see here we've got 1 through 5. Of these 3,651, I can see that I'm probably missing 551 calls. Maybe there's another option. Maybe those were actually 550 some calls that were actually entertained on an individual's voicemail box and wasn't actually part of the handler. Certainly a little additional data digging could be used to find that out or figure that out. But let's just run with what we have here for now. So I've created a Cradle to Grave search set summary section here. I've built out 5 different options here to identify the menu button presses. So once again, whether that's just combing the granular history details within the sandbox, like I mentioned earlier, or actually pulling out your cell phone, placing some test calls into that that shared line group, that Unity handler or the auto attendant, and then we can track it by your cell phone number off of the calling party number. It's pretty easy to do that. But in this section here, so it looks attractive. Option 1, 2, 3, 4. We have some labels here for what they are, corresponding counts and total summarizations, as well as maybe some duration counts based off of those calls. But also what I've thrown in here, now this isn't granular necessarily to the menu options themselves. These are actually calls that came to this Unity handler over the time frame. So from May 15th to the 26th, I've broken it down by date over that time frame just for counts, durations, and ring time averages. And also broken it down by hourly, so a little period over period. But once again, this is not specific to any one of the menu options. If we needed to, we could break them out individually. I've done that in the widgets, which I'll show you in a few moments. But these could certainly be sliced out and put into different reports so we can get more granularity on these menu option presses. These summarizations that we're seeing right here are for the group as a whole, or for all 3,651 that came into the Unity handler during this time frame. Okay, and then some chartables here, but obviously if it's hitting a Unity handler, there's not going to be any differentiation between the forwards, abandons, or answered. Once it hits Unity, it's all going to be connected automatically. So these are kind of moot, let's say, mostly why they're flatlined here. Okay, so now how do we actually build all that? So once again, kind of utilizing some data examples, leaning on the Cradle to Grave logic, looking at some exports and kind of synthesizing some of the search queries that we can certainly do in our history section, we can find those options. For instance, maybe these triggers here are part of option 2 within my call handler tree. Maybe this is menu 2 to go over to the rentals department or to this department or to that department based off of these triggers. We're going to be able to see these. Now, even though the call does go into contact center, it should pop back out into call manager so that we can clock it accordingly based off of these triggered DNs, and also even see the agent DN that it went to as well. So knowing that, maybe that's option 2 off of your test calls, or maybe you look in your call manager programming and you know for certain that this trigger is going to that menu option for number 2. Then what we would do in the report body, we're going to skip the grouping results, because the grouping results are actually going to group off of the initial or the primary search set, which is right here, which is just pretty much just us identifying any inbound traffic that's hitting our Unity handler. So I've actually had this turned off at the moment. No need to have that turned on. Search set summaries are going to be the summarizations of everything that's coming off of the initial, but mainly we want to get down into here. We want to get down to the Cradle to Grave stuff. So even though I had this turned on earlier and I said we would come back to it, we've come back to it. So we have the Cradle to Grave search sets. These are what's needed to actually kind of build out and capture the subsequent routings off of the dangling participle. Now, what is the dangling participle I'm referencing? It's my initial search criteria. So my initial search criteria of anything inbound coming, hitting my Unity handler, which is 8,000. So the Cradle to Grave search sets are going to give us subsequent summarizations off of that first initial step that we already have that we don't even need to necessarily worry about at this moment. So now what we would do is we'd be kind of combing these cradle to grave reports one more time, or even just utilizing your test calls as well as we found them in the cradle to grave reports after we ran them, after you made those test calls, then to build out the summarizations in the report for these. So we saw some 8,000. So we saw a bunch of those. Where are they? Very top. These top three, for instance, let me zoom in for your eyes. So these top three that we knew were coming into 8,000, but they don't have any related. We know they don't have any related legs, which means that the call just pretty much ended there. And then we can also tell that by the cause code. Once again, the normal call clearing cause code. Now, as long as that's on either one, we know that there's not another step to this call. So whether or not maybe this quad 7 or 7080 or whatever DN within the tree could potentially be self-help, that's kind of what we could certainly build that option 1 around. Option 1 I'm calling a self-help here. So I'm leaning on the normal call clearing cause code on either one of those cause code fields. So we have our combination in there, but also anding it with the Unity DN number of 8,000. So once again, this will be option 1. We know there are no next steps for this. There shouldn't be any cradle to grave, anything for these legs. They were serviced by option 1, whether it was time of date or location, address, directions, etc., but kind of a self-help menu option. Secondarily, we were mentioning kind of contact center stuff that we were seeing. So I'm keying off of some triggers that we saw in here. So original called party number, and then also utilizing the device pattern. So as you've played with Verify before, you certainly know that we have plenty of filterable options in here. So kind of maybe looking at here, comb through here real quickly. So here's what I'm looking at. So for option 2 in that report, in the cradle to grave search set section, I'm kind of identifying these triggers for these queues. So I'm pairing it with the original called party number of a couple, 3 different 5-digit trigger varieties, as well as the I guess the preface here of the terminating device name that contains UCCX. So that's going to give us our option 2. Those are added together. Pretty straightforward there. If there was any other triggers I needed to add in here, anything additional, certainly we have the laundry list of options here that we can easily add into it. And option 3, one of my favorites. Option 3 is ringing down to our Unity Hunt pilot. I said Unity Hunt pilot. I meant our Hunt group pilot, excuse me. So once again, I don't need to have additional filters in here to recognize that first leg of the call that came into the 8,000 because we're already accomplishing that with our dangling participle in the initial search set here. So these are the subsequent, I guess, hanging branches, if you will, off of the initial search criteria. So for option 3, I'm going to know that all these calls came into the Unity handler first, but then were secondarily presented over to the Hunt group. So that's my option 3. And then option 4, other DNs, etc. Maybe that's for operators, sales group, going to a department. So once again, a couple different options we have for filtering capabilities, but we can always lean on the DNs if need be. Okay, from there, then we always cannot forget there's a toggle underneath to turn on the summary section here. So turning that on then will give us the option to add in the high level criteria that we want to see for that summarization for those menu options. So as you can see here, I have some totals, some abandonment, and then duration counts. That's exactly, I believe, what we're seeing here in this guy right here. Those are the columns and the sections right here for the cradle to grave section right here. Okay, so that gives us a lot of stuff to look at there. And then once again, we can add additional pieces on there. So adding this in here is going to be pretty easy. I've already built the report and we've already kind of ran it, but you have options for that stuff. Once again, we can break these out because there's additional potential steps, if you will. There's round robins that are happening. For instance, if someone presses the wrong menu option, goes to the wrong maybe support queue in the contact center, maybe they meant to press option 3 or 4 and they pressed option 2, we can see some of that round robin stuff that's happening within these sequences as well. And then as always, pick and pull certain pieces out if we want to. And also, even kind of pair them with the cause codes as well, because once again, that normal call clearing cause code is always going to should be on the very last leg of every one of these sequences, denoting that the call is no longer complete and has been terminated. So we get a lot of luxury with that. But then kind of knowing that and having those filters at our disposal, we can also then take that to the dashboard. So I'm sure this is way zoomed in too much. Let me get back to 80% here. Come on, mouse. There we go. On the far right pane of my board here, you'll see I have 3 kind of tiled summary widgets here. Now, these can be easily packaged, just kind of like what we did in the report. So I'm picking off of maybe the kind of the search sets that we're using in the functionality to give me options 1, 2, and 3. Don't get me wrong, the automated reports can be delivered on frequency, whether that's hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, biannually, a lot of options there. Or it can be a rolling widget that's always refreshing on a dashboard somewhere. Now, maybe this dashboard is being used on a supervisor secondary monitor. Maybe it's being broadcast onto a large television within an environment for people to keep tabs on their own productivities for the team as a whole. So we can certainly kind of mimic and rebuild these those search filters out into widgets like this, and we could have them tiled on the right like they were, or we can kind of expand them if we wanted to. So if maybe a manager wants to know what's happening within this Unity handler tree for options 1 through 5, 1 through 10, whatever the need may be here, very easy to kind of build these out. And once again, they're refreshing on an interval, whether that's 5 minutes, 15 minutes, or an hour. There is a refresh built in. Also, very easy for us to key off of the relative time frames that we're keying off of. My lab example, I don't have current week's data, but you could certainly be keying off of 2-day or current day's data. Maybe you don't care about yesterday. You'll only want to have these tiled to include current day. Very easy to do so in a production environment. My data in this lab just doesn't support it. But also you could have a lot of build outs with this stuff too. Option 3 was my hunt group option. Let me go ahead and copy this real quickly. I know I'm running along, so I'm going to wrap this up. I have a lot of stuff built around hunt groups here in this lab. Where did it just drop my field? Where did it send that to? Is it not built it yet? Come on. Try to make a quick copy here because I want to showcase this a little different flavor that we can deliver with the widgets as well. Here it comes. So whether or not I have it tiled like this in a summary widget, whether I have it pulled out to this, the width of the page, certainly we can also lay this out in different kind of visual aspects. So let me copy this guy real briefly here. Come on, lab. I probably found another spot to put it. It sure did. Excuse me. Let me pull this down. Dropping this here. I'm going to change this to be a distribution style widget here, just to showcase to you the level of grouping that we certainly have. So knowing this is a menu option that's coming from the Unity handler, the last redirect DN of 8,000, keying off the hunt pilot of 77280. Correct. External DNs that are calling in, all blended and anded together, quote unquote. But I'm going to change this configuration type to be a distribution or a kind of a donut chart. So I'm going to change it, but I do need a grouping mechanism. I'm going to utilize, I don't know, maybe terminating terminating end user ID. I'll use that. Certainly, we can display the users in a few different options. We can turn on a summary bar for them as well, but it has the same search filter that I have built in for the initial tiled one up above. So I can certainly showcase that same 120 call statistics and see who are the agents that are in this hunt group that are servicing Unity option 3. And if I want to throw a quick summary bar on just so the numbers are on par with one another, there they are. This should be 120, this should be 120 because they're all utilizing the same exact search function that I have built into it already. I'm going to copy it one more time, and I'm pretty much going to replicate exactly what we're seeing above here, but it's just a different time frame because this is also including calls that are coming directly into that hunt group. I'm picking on the same one, but I want to whittle this down to only Unity menu options. And on this one, I'm going to change it to be a grouping statistic widget, or what I like to call it as a leaderboard widget because I sort it based off of total call count from highest to lowest. Let's go ahead and save that, but let's actually throw in some grouping statistics. Okay, some high-level stuff, sure. And we'll give this 15 as the maximum. I got like 10 or so people in here. So we'll see a very similar looking breakdown here, but once again, only solidifying the calls that came in from the Unity handler, which are 120 of them, so that we know based off of our report, our ad hoc searches within the sandbox in the history section underneath analytics, very easily can kind of help us pair these together. And once again, these are running on refreshes. The summary bars are all the same. It's the same content, just a different look and feel, but very easy to kind of build these out and help complement dashboards as well that are frequently refreshing as well. So I know that was a little long in the tooth. I hope that wasn't too confusing. But Mike, do we have any questions from the group before we turn this one down?
Just one quick one.
Sure.
Can the same type of report be used to track UCCX calls?
Yes, it can. Great question as well. We certainly can, and that was kind of option 2, if you will. So when we were kind of combing that, let me see which one looks best here. Let me zoom in for your eyes. But yes, we can. Now, we do lose a little, we lose a little bit of visibility when calls go into contact center from call manager, but definitely we're going to know that the call manager was front ending those calls, but definitely the triggers that are going into those queues. I would believe that this, this corresponding directory number or even the C6 port number should have some reference to the queue that it belongs to or that it's routing calls into, certainly. And then from there, even in these sequences, then we'll see maybe this this user here in the rentals department, JL, is definitely part of the, the rentals group, and potentially 77100 is servicing that rentals queue within contact center. So we're not going to see everything, but we're going to see, we're going to see the lion's share of everything. Just a little exclusion on the things that are happening within the contact center before it pops back out into call manager. But definitely history searches and cradle to grave quick searches and kind of build this kind of listing out the report and the data in this manner kind of helps kind of educate and just and provides that level of discovery that you may not have had otherwise. But great question.
Excellent. Perfect. And that is it for the Q&A, unless anyone has any last minute questions. Going once? No, I think we're good. Then let's let me take back control. All right. Here we go. Order the Q&A. Great job as always, Matt. I just want to remind everybody about Planet Verify real quick. It's a new online community where you can connect with us and other verified users. You can also sign up to be a beta tester for Verify EFT 13.0. So if you want to talk with us or sign up for the beta, go ahead, hop over to planet.verify.com or verify.com/planet to take a look around. And if you're planning on going to Cisco Live, we will be there. If you can't find it, you can find us at booth 3362. We'll also be hosting an after-hours meetup with customers and partners. So if you're interested in hanging out with us, let your account manager know. And then the winner, or the moment that we've all been waiting for, the winner of the $50 Amazon gift card is Bill Tito. Congrats, Bill. Your account manager will be reaching out to you shortly. And then don't forget to join us next week where Matt and Dre will demonstrate 3 different ways to speed up your Verify system. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Thank you all. Take care.